Welcome to Earth's Mightiest Weirdos. We've got a little bit of a different looking weirdo panel tonight. Rob and Marky Mark were unavailable to join us this evening, even though Marky Mark, fake Mark, might make an appearance in the comments, he said. But stepping in to the place of Marky Mark is from fresh off of Babu's freaking podcast this week is Michael Ruby. How are you doing, Ruby?
I am doing great, and I'm thrilled to make my first appearance in the MCU.
I can't believe we're allowing the Yankee hat. Like in some of their multiverse, we might not allow it, but we'll let it slide for this.
Whoa.
It is the multiverse of madness, right?
It is. And, 2012 was good times when the Yankees could still win, even if there was an invading Chitauri army.
That's fair. And then stepping into the piano, Rob, is Duane, fresh off of This Diz Live. The two of you guys got that one finished up. I'm not gonna lie, I missed it tonight. I do apologize. I'll go back and catch it. But how was the show tonight, Duane?
It was lots of fun. We had a good time just talking about some of the things going on in the parks. Lots of happenings right now. So it's pretty exciting.
There is a lot going on. Masks mandate is over as of tomorrow. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Look at that. I went to Universal Studios without masks over the weekend. It was bizarre. Just bizarre. So, all right, guys. And Mark, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
Are you finished?
I'm burdened with glorious purpose. That's how I am this evening.
I love that part when he ends up in the desert and he finds like the tallest rock around him just to stand on top of.
Hops up on it.
So freaking good.
When you're in Mongolia, that's all you've got. That's it.
They interrupt him. Who are you? What are you doing here? Like it was all executed so well. It was great. Well, let's get into it. But first, we have a little bit of Marvel news. Black Widow tickets are officially on sale. If you did not know that, you can buy tickets for Black Widow, which premieres 5 p.m. I'm kind of stoked about the 5 p.m. first showing instead of the normal 7 p.m. So 5 p.m. Thursday, July 8th for opening day of July 9th. I was able to purchase mine, and I think I'm only honestly going to do it once. You can also pre-order on Disney Plus as of now as well. Gentlemen, does anybody else have their tickets or have purchased the premiere access? Ruby?
No, I'm going to be on family vacation, the first in over a year and a half. So I'm going to have to wait, and I had to wait all this time for Black Widow. I'll binge it as soon as I get back.
Fair enough. Duane, did you get your tickets yet?
I haven't, but I plan on going to the theater, so I am going to try to get some of those as soon as possible here, maybe even this evening, now that you mentioned it.
I know you probably already got yours, right, Mark?
I do not, but much like Cruella, I will be visiting in the theaters and be purchasing on Disney Plus Premier Access.
Yes, it is going to cover my many rewatches, even though I have AMC A-list. All right, gentlemen. Well, let's get into it. Let's talk about our puny god.
Puny god.
Wow. All right, guys. Well, this show started. This one got us in. It entered us into the MCU right away. This series already feels bigger than any other because when you start with the Avengers, there's nothing else that is going to feel much bigger. We went right back into the biggest movie of all time. I don't care if Avatar overtook it. It's on a technicality. We are fully into the Avengers Endgame timeline. Did anybody else get chills when this happened, Duane? Like, I would assume you like this as I did.
Oh, yeah. I was totally geeked out, man. I just loved it. Right away, I was excited. I was like, how much better can it get? There they are. Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk. I was jacked, man. Right from the get-go.
He smelled the cologne of two Tony Starks almost immediately.
Underrated line. It's the most underrated line of that episode that not everybody caught, and it's so good. You would also smell the cologne of two Tony Starks. I love it.
Blame the Avengers.
No. Let's be specific. There's one Avenger to be blamed, and it's Hulk.
Yeah.
Because big tough guy, no stairs. Like, it's his fault. If he hadn't come busting through the door, we
Anger
wouldn't have any
management.
time variance. So,
I'm just impressed. First of all, okay, 2 points. One, I'm impressed he could fit down the stairs. He couldn't even get through the door jam. So
many stairs.
So many stairs. Secondly, he can leap as high as a building. He didn't think to just jump off of the building at that point.
He'd already caused enough destruction.
I mean, come on.
The extra shot that we got of Loki in this one with him like waving to Hulk, like while he was on the elevator, like just so cocky as ever Loki. Like they did such a good job in getting you back into this is 2012 Loki and he was the villain, and yet we spend only one episode. I thought the entire first season was going to cover our getting from 2012 Loki to the somewhat redeemed Loki that we got at the end of Avengers Endgame. Avengers Infinity War, and they did it in one episode. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But
I love that. Yep. Let's get
amazing.
That later.
We're not wasting time, but yeah, it was great. Well, like we talked about it, he goes to the desert of Mongolia. He finds his rock to stand on to tell about his glorious purpose, and he meets the TVA. Gets smacked in the jaw, moves in 1/16 speed. The visuals of that was awesome. Like when he's going all slow and and Hunter B-15 just talking normally, putting the collar on him. It was great. It was great. Ruby, what'd you think of that?
I thought it was fantastic. I also love the fact that like she doesn't sweat him at all. I saw a great review that kind of made her akin to Roz from Night Court. I don't know if I'm dating myself. If any of you guys remember Night Court.
Oh yeah. We're good.
The no nonsense bailiff.
Yeah.
That's just going to totally knock somebody around. And I love that she just doesn't sweat him in the least. And it immediately sets up. This is a whole different ball game when you've got a god that has no power even with their own timeline relative to this force that's coming through against him. I thought it immediately set off that he's going to be out of his league wherever they take him to.
Well, and they're constantly doing what he views as belittling him or insulting him. They're calling this a standard variance, like it's not a big deal, when he literally just took the Space Stone and the Tesseract and jumped halfway across the world, and like it's barely even a change. But Mark, I'm gonna go to you on this. They reset the timeline, and throughout the episode, we're gonna continuously talk about this with those reset charges because that's what this Loki variant is going after. But they talk about pruning and clipping, and it seems like they're ending that timeline, just straight up ending it. And Loki's watches it, and he looks a little bit horrified.
Yeah, Duane and I were talking about this morning. That I said, is anyone going to address the fact that they probably just nuked millions of people in that variant?
I will stop talking about it, just if that makes you feel any better.
No, like somebody needs to, like, that's the elephant of the room. It's like, oh, let's prune this timeline. Everyone that's in that timeline just died. That it's like, oh, well, you're not supposed to exist. Sorry, but we're about to end this existence altogether. That's horrifying. It really is horrifying. And it's just so casual and so nonchalant that when they create an alternate universe, that they just kind of, that's their job. Hey, let's roll up in here in one of our doors. Let's drop our little galaxy ending nuclear device and call it a day. Anybody want to go get a panini?
It's the new snap, right?
Yeah.
It's the new snap.
It's worse than the snap though. Like
everybody,
yeah. So I mean, we're going to talk about the ethics of the TVA and just everything throughout this series, and especially throughout this episode. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but they take Loki, they take him back to the TVA, which is just stuck in 1950s Mad Men type office. But they ask the most important question of the entire show, and it's, do you possess what most cultures would call a soul? I loved this Loki getting just basically booked into the TVA, and they go after his Asgardian leather and he hates it. And then he goes into that robot room and just, do you possess a soul? Are you a robot? And he's genuinely like,
Bryan, are there people that don't know that they're a robot?
I can't stop thinking about it. Like, I genuinely cannot stop thinking about it. Like, I created a meme of, that meme with the brain and the guy almost asleep. And what if I was a robot and didn't know it? Like, you'd get burned from the inside out. And Loki looks genuinely like Tom Hiddleston was an absolute genius the way he acted everything in this show. Ruby, I see you nodding along. I think that resonated with you a little bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think this show has got to get put up for an Emmy for production design. I am in love with the production design of this show, and the production design and the music. I think what's really cool is the connectivity to the feeling of that Ragnarok had, but at the same time, because everything's kind of weirdly off. And I know this is a strange place to bring up this type of film, but like, it gives me some serious Kubrick Clockwork Orange vibes.
Yep.
Where it's just really a little bit creepy and a little bit off, despite the fact that everything is perfectly symmetrical all the way down to the perfect Helvetica typeface. And then, yeah, I mean,
An orange clock.
Exactly. T-shirt game on point.
At least it's not Comic Sans, because that's unforgivable.
Does anyone have any orange slices?
Yep. So, but the Melto metal detector was a pretty neat moment. And everything Hiddleston does is gold. Like, his reactions to everything are so on point. He goes through, I think you kind of put it best. He goes through an entire season's worth of emotions. Yeah. In one episode.
Well, I think you can tell from his perspective as an actor, he relishes the opportunity to play this role. That there have been, to not name any of them, but there have been some actors in recent history in the MCU that I seriously question whether they have the motivation to even want to just toe the line anymore and do another movie. Drax. But I look at him and I say, listen, here's a guy that understands his glorious purpose. And he's really making the most of this opportunity, but he really enjoys being one of the biggest stars on the planet right now. And it's refreshing that he understands this opportunity. He likes the character. He's still having a ton of fun with it. And we've said this before in other podcasts, not Marvel podcasts, but Disney ones. He's one of the most beloved villains in history. Like, he is an anti-hero. There's not a lot of villains that get this kind of love and adulation. He happens to do it.
If you go back in the Earth's Mightiest Weirdos catalog, we did do a villain episode and we gave Loki a lot of love in that one. Sarah says that she just finished Cafe Rio and she's back on the road. Sarah, where are you driving? Cafe Rio, that screams my former land of Utah area where I was living before. So Sarah, let us know where you're at, but thank you for joining us. And we're just getting into the episode, so you didn't miss a ton. Frankie says, go Yankees. I'm apparently outnumbered here and I don't care, but it is what it is. But I mean, Hiddleston's great. Him and Owen Wilson acting off of each other in this particular episode. Duane, I'm going to start this next one with you with the star of the episode. And that was the Tara Strong voiced Miss Minutes, and the multiversal war dialogue that she gives us. Well, right after we meet Mr. Goldman Sachs's kid, and that guy gets obliterated. That's pretty funny. But anyway, Miss Minutes in the multiversal war.
Wow. Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I enjoyed how that, even what he had just said, then all of a sudden she says exactly what he had just said. It's kind of forecasting to what he's feeling, what he's going through. And, she kind of gives us the, kind of the lay of the land. Talks about the Nexus, talks about the different timelines and the multiverse of madness. And, where, we start to understand, hey, which we all knew anyhow, but, this is setting up some great things and, for the future for whether it's Doctor Strange or Spider-Man or some of those things. It's just setting them up beautifully. And, the voice, I thought her voice was awesome. Just that like perfect, like tone and sweet voice, that Southern kind of, accent. It was priceless for me. That whole scene when he, even as before that, when he has to take a number and he's like, there's two of us in here. Why do I need a number? And then we saw how excited he was to have a number just a few minutes later.
Man, it strikes the perfect balance of comedy and tension, and it's great. Mark, did you have something on Miss Minutes?
Just that I love the way that they can pick up for people that are new to the MCU. My wife watched it. She does not know a lot about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She does know who Loki is because Ragnarok is her favorite movie because she likes to ogle and stare at Chris. But she could watch it, and that was a really good scene for her because it kind of gave her a 30,000-foot overview of what is actually happening. Mm-hmm. That it's a very fan-friendly way to get people up to speed, and the graphics are fun. It's really playful, and I think that that's what the MCU excels at. Is there's not a difficult learning curve for people who say, "Hey, I really want, like everyone loves Marvel. I want to get into it." And they can inject themselves wherever they want in the timeline, that they don't have to. There's no prerequisite to say, well, if you really want to know, you have to go back and watch Iron Man. Marvel doesn't do that with any of their films. They make standalone films, standalone series that you can watch that and enjoy. And Miss Minutes is the perfect way to kind of introduce what is actually happening. And it was a lot of fun. It was smart.
I mean, I think that we now have further proof that if you ever want to do boring exposition really well, just create a little animated cartoon. I got a very much like DNA and Jurassic Park vibe from Miss Minutes, where it's like, oh, we're going to tell you a whole bunch of stuff that's really, really important and really scientific and could go over your head, but it's animated, so you'll love it. Like it did that well. I also love for those of us who do remember the other films. I think that there's some sort of family curse in the multiverse that apparently if you are an Asgardian royal son, you apparently don't do well with being processed. It was very much like Thor and Ragnarok, where he's kind of brought in and goes through the same thing. And it's you wonder in a past lifetime, did Odin have to go through a line at some point?
Mm-hmm. It's very reminiscent of the melt stick from Ragnarok, watching Mr. Goldman Sachs get obliterated. So
who had it worse? Was it worse for Thor and his haircut and the butch job they done on his haircut, or more humiliating for Loki to get
more respect on Stanley's name? That was not a butch job whatsoever.
Laser beam dressed down by the robot.
Dude, admit it, you like it because it looks like the Martez sisters.
Moving on. And then we finally get our title card for the episode. The letters constantly changing, and we're used to that from the trailers and everything else. But the score in this show has been great. We pick back up in France with Owen Wilson, Mobius M. Mobius, and he is inspecting some dead Minutemen. The timekeepers are not the timekeepers, but the timekeepers' jobs. Oh, I want to go back to. I apologize. I want to go back a little bit to Miss Minutes and the Multiversal War. It reintroduced us to the Nexus event that got it off of its kilter. But if you watch the animation, it talks about the guy and it shows the variant being many different kinds of people. You need to remember that because we are going to see Loki in many different forms throughout this series. Also, we talked about it already when they use that charge, that branch, they prune it. Like when you prune a branch, that it kills it. That's gone. Like that branch no longer exists after that reset. So, and you saw Loki when he was going through, it looks like a horrifying event. So the ethics of the TVA, we'll get more about it. They talk about the multiversal war and that it was determined that this was the one sacred timeline. Well, the only person that gets to decide if that's the sacred timeline is the people that won the multiversal war. And that is the timekeepers. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. Was it just one particular person who's determined this particular sacred timeline because it's what works out best for them, and they need to make sure it's managed so their life turns out how it's going? That's, again, we'll get into the weeds a little bit later when we talk about that. But we pick up in France in 1549 with Owen Wilson talking French about his imbecile people. Wow. And they meet this little boy who then points to Mephisto. Of course, he points to Mephisto on the window. Wow. It's gonna get me every time. Wow. But the kid smiles, and the kid has blue teeth. So the Kablooey Gum. Was there anything that stood out to anybody with the Kablooey Gum looking at it? It obviously doesn't fit this timeline. It's going to mean something. We're going to start with Mark Valentine. Do you have any theories around the Kablooey Gum?
I'm not doing it this time around, man. I'm not doing it. I'm not saying it's Mephisto, but I'm saying it's Mephisto.
Behind the Kablooey Gum too?
Wow.
Yeah, why not? Dude, listen, people who have been with us since Marvel Monday know very famously that I lost numerous bets now to you. And look, there's a call already in the comments that says bet. I lost numerous bets to you that I went all in on Professor X, on WandaVision.
I tried to stop you.
You did try to stop me. So I behaved myself so well with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I was happier as a result of that. Here would be my only guess. The name is really interesting. Kablooey is a bang. I would think it would have something to do with the Big Bang or a world creating event. The name itself just struck me. I didn't want to buy too much into the devil that was on the cover of the Kablooey Gum. But again, this is all about creation.
Horns like the devil.
It is. So the gum itself could be one of these seeds that would lead to creation. As in, this gum itself is creating an alternate universe or an alternate timeline because it's anachronistic. That it's out of place. So just the appearance of the gum in a time period when it's not supposed to belong could again have a very far rippling effect. That's all I thought about the gum. Is the name of it as Kablooey could be just that, is it's creating an alternate reality.
Ruby, do you got anything here?
Well, it's, if you look at the package and you think about the horns as well, who's the Blue Devil?
Yep.
It's Loki. Loki is not truly an Asgardian. He's actually a frost giant, and the frost giants are blue, and kind of feels like this is something that he left behind as his little trick.
He's the only frost giant that keeps his hair as well, and it's notable that this frost giant, we assume to be a frost giant on this package, has hair. And again, I don't think it's Mephisto, but Loki has horns just like that. On his
Jared, did the genie in the DuckTales movie say that? Yes, he did. Awesome. Good catch.
So is the Kablooey Gum, is it turning people into an army of frost giants? I mean, it almost seems like whichever variant of Loki this is, it's his frost giant version. So is it one that went through, like, was successful in the takeover of Asgard from Thor 1, or was never taken from Jotunheim in the first place, never adopted by Odin? There's many different ways in this can go, and I trust Marvel that they're not going to make it too complex that the average fan can't follow, but I think it's going to be nerdy enough that I am going to just absolutely geek out over it. I'm very, very excited.
We are getting 6 episodes, correct? Of season 1?
Correct. And it has not been fully confirmed for a season 2. However, Michael Waldron, who is the showrunner, head writer of this show, wrote this first episode and was, when he was attached to Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie to write that as well, was also said that he was writing season 2. So we assume that we are also getting a season 2, but there's a lot that's going to happen in season 1 that may make it TVA based and may not.
I'm hoping that it doesn't. The one thing that I criticized of Captain America and the Winter Soldier or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, was that I thought 6 episodes was a little too short of a story arc to really flesh out specific items. I'm hoping that this doesn't duplicate that same mistake. 6 is a very short run. 8 or 10 would have been ideal.
Yeah, but you're looking in that show, you're looking at 2 main characters. In this one, you're only looking at 1.
I think the beauty here as well is that, I think Duane was saying it earlier, like, we're going to get the fallout of this throughout the rest of what's coming from the MCU. So we know that we're going to get fallout from this in Spider-Man. We know we're going to get fallout from this in Doctor Strange. And then we're going to probably get fallout from this in Thor: Love and Thunder as well. They've got a bigger canvas to paint on with how this show comes through, because Loki, whether he gets another full series or not, he's not disappearing from the MCU anytime soon.
And it also very well could happen where we get a Loki season 2 and it's starring Sophia DiMartino, and Tom Hiddleston's gone. Like that is ultimately possible. Facebook user says, "Hey, Arnold was great and I should be ashamed of myself." Thank you for listening to United We Fan. I greatly appreciate that. If you are that Facebook user, click the link in the comments above that says streamyard.com/Facebook so we can see who you are. We'd love to talk to you because it looks like the same person said, how many universes or timelines are there? Right now there's one. There's the sacred timeline because all the branches get clipped. And they get clipped pretty quickly. So now there's a couple one of the variant Loki that is created that took those 6 charges. So we'll see before like what's going to happen there. But right now there's only one timeline, but we know that there's Multiverse of Madness coming up. There's going to be multiple timelines within that film. Heavy rumors that there's also going to be multiverse aspects to Spider-Man No Way Home. And then who knows where it's going to go from there. Kang, we're going to talk about him here in just a second, is coming in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. There's going to be a lot of multiverse stuff coming.
So would you indulge us now? Like I in my opinion, I think this might be a good time to then start getting into the weeds with that concept of the timeline and the sacred timeline and who dictates what is what. When he's on trial, Loki has a healthy dose of skepticism when he kind of brings this up with Judge Renslayer and says, "Who makes that determination?" And she says, "You know, the basically the timekeepers do that.
I dictate to the terms of their dictations."
Yeah. So then, what's your job? I dictate to the terms of their dictations. It seems to be very bureaucratic. You got into this a little bit, Brian, with the ethics of all of this, that they are clipping timelines and annihilating entire futures and civilizations of people that are not deemed to be part of the plan. It seems like even Loki, you know, with all of his knowledge and getting a chance to see his life play out, he understands that some of this is very messed up, to say it plainly.
His glorious purpose isn't glorious at all.
No.
Right.
You know, when he learns that his purpose is basically to make other people achieve better versions of themselves, it's got to be very humbling to him. But there's a big ethical discussion, I think, surrounding the multiverse and the TVA. I don't know if I'm not sold on the idea that they're good guys yet.
No, and we're gonna, like you walked me right into it. Did you do that on purpose?
No, go ahead.
So, like, and I don't want to get biblical or religious or anything. That's not what we're here for. But I mean, this is very war in heaven, like Satan and Jesus type of storyline telling, because it's agency versus no agency. And what the TVA is saying is you don't have a choice. You are going to live out your life. Like you said, you have your purpose, and Loki's purpose was to simply help others become, hey, Ethan, how are you? Help others become the best versions of themselves. And Loki doesn't handle this well. But it's very unethical. It's very, so let's get back to Ravonna Renslayer. So she has some sort of relation. We were discussing that before we got on here. She has some sort of relationship with Kang. It does seem like in the comics, I don't know any about her much at all. She does marry Kang at some point. Kang the Conqueror is in the family tree line of Reed Richards. But he's, in my opinion, Kang is the sole timekeeper or creator of the TVA and the timekeepers to keep this sacred timeline, because it's the one where he comes to power. So whether we see Kang or not in this series,
yeah,
he's been cast already. We know he's first coming in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, unless he pops up somewhere else.
And Brian, let me hit the pause button to clarify those people that may be in the comments and don't know who Kang is. Kang is a time traveler, and his MO or his purpose, to simplify this. Again, please forgive me for simplifying this. His purpose is to subdue and subjugate all of the timelines to his end. That as the time traveler, he's constantly clipping and conquering various timelines. He's a part of that war that we are kind of privy to in the opening sequence with Miss Minutes, that he is one of these these time travelers that is waging war against the various timelines to his benefit and to his end. We don't know yet if Kang is part of the TVA actively at this moment, but he is one of these overarching enemies or entities that is going to come into play in the Multiverse of Madness very soon.
What we do know is that whoever the timekeepers are, whether it's Ravonna Renslayer or it's Kang or a council of Kangs, that they created the TVA, all of it, including Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson may not act ethically, and I don't think he even has the ability to know whether he's acting ethically or not. I think he does have some sort of feeling because he really, really likes, I mean, he takes pity on that child in the church, but I don't think ethics can get in his way, and I think Loki might teach him some of that. Go ahead, Ruby.
I don't know if any of them even understand the concept of ethics. You know, right. when you live in a singularly moralistic existence, I mean, I think the clerk was his name Casey.
Yeah.
Like he's
explain to the man what a fish is, please.
Yeah, he's perfect in that he's totally oblivious.
Mm-hmm.
He's totally oblivious to the fact that anything exists outside and what might be good or bad. You know, Loki says, you know, you're keeping Infinity Stones in a drawer, and he's like, yeah, some of the guys use them as paperweights. We totally skipped over this too when he asked Loki like what the blue box is. He goes, "It's the Tesseract," and he walks away and he goes, "That sounds dumb." I love that. And they don't even understand the concept of life and death. You know, when Loki says, you know, you're going to help me, I'm going to gut you like a fish, and then he says, "What's a fish? What does it matter? I'm going to kill you." Yeah, well, I'm trying to weigh how bad my death is going to be. Like there's just nothing that they can compare anything to when they've been living an eternity in this entirely singular existence. So, I think right and wrong are matters that the TVA may not understand at all, and maybe Mobius is the closest to kind of understanding what that might be and leaning a direction. But otherwise, think about how dispassionate he is with showing Loki the film strip. He's very clear about it. I think part of him trying to understand what makes Loki tick is he truly doesn't understand what makes anybody tick, because from his point of view, everything's determined.
I mean, that was the most interesting aspect of that whole discussion is the absence of free will in all of this, that your life has been predetermined. All of your decisions have been plotted out, that while you may think that you have free will and you have choice, and that you have the ability to control your own fate and future, the timekeepers know more than you do, and they can plot out your trajectory, not just in this universe, but in every variation of what you could possibly do, and know the exact trajectory of that. And then make the judgment of whether or not that was acceptable for the universe or not, and kill you.
Well, and what's incredible about that too is and it just dawned on me for the first time, is it's Loki getting a taste of his own medicine. Right. Yeah. Like he's when he's talking with Mobius about, when he keeps asking, why do you want to conquer people? Why do you want to have power? Why do you want to rule Midgard? And he's saying, because, freedom is a myth, and he has his whole monologuing in the Avengers. And now he's recognizing what happens when he actually doesn't have agency. And it's not quite as fun as he thought it was going to be when he was wearing the horns.
Yeah. Angela, I just want to say thank you. Angela Thompson in the comments said, are any of you educators? Our high schools totally need people like y'all that so deeply analyze themes, concepts, characters, symbolism, etc. I'm a Disney gal and not as deep into Marvel, but I'm drawn by your conversations. Makes me want to explore these movies and shows deeper. Angela, thank you so much. That's just really kind feedback. I want to say thank you. I was an educator for 15 years. Mike has done some teaching as well.
I was as well.
Duane as well. So I am a very passionate educator, and it just circumstantially I'm now in another profession, but I never want to shake those educator roots that I have. But that thank you. That comment meant a lot to the panel.
Yes. Thank you so much, Angela. Go ahead.
I want to ask a question. I want to back up to Kang for just a second. The timekeepers, the three timekeepers that they keep showing, like in the capes, the middle timekeeper has the blue face. I wondered, am I the only one that thought that possibly could be Kang?
No, I thought so too. I thought that instantly. I don't think so, but I thought
it may not be. But I mean, that immediately made me think that's who that was, and maybe that's just what they wanted you to, to kind of go down that rabbit path. But I just wondered if I was the only one that thought that. But also, what Mike was saying is exactly what hit me too. With that that guy, like you said, that was just out there, sitting at the desk, and he's got all the Infinity Stones. It was almost like he doesn't know any other life than that. So it was like, to him, it's just, hey, this is what I do. I sit at this desk. I check people in. That's it. And I found that really interesting.
That moment with the Infinity Stones was a real teachable moment for Loki.
Let's talk about it now. I'll pull it up.
Yeah.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you think of Loki and all that Loki has craved thus far, not just 2012 Loki, but Loki for the better part of the Infinity Saga has quested for power, that he craved and sought power. I mean, they intimated and they said as much in this episode as well. For him to look at that drawer and to see the manifestation of power in the universe as he knows it, casually sitting there as paperweights in the drawer, was a huge moment for him in his character development to realize, here I am falsely chasing power in the universe when right in front of my eyes is the absolute power that if it can render these things powerless, this is the real power broker in the universe, and I want to be a part of it. Take me back to my cell. Let me know, how can I be a part of this? Because I want, this is where I need to be.
Yeah. What's he say? He says the TVA is formidable. I thought that line spoke volumes.
I go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we're also mistaken if we think that Loki is a good guy now. I still think that he is a very morally ambiguous character as currently constituted. Just because he saw the demise and the death of his mother, saw the end of his father's life, got the validation that he needed from Thor, I don't think that that enough is enough to make him turn into a good person. Make no mistake about it. He is there because he still very much is that guy from 2012 who craves power. That he is saddling himself with the TVA. He's siding with the TVA because his end game has not changed. He still wants to be a power broker in the universe.
Well, I took it more as him being, I agree with you. I don't think he's been somehow magically cured of anything by seeing his life play out. But I think he did a great job of at least getting his character up to current base. I think what the Infinity Stones did to him was it humbled him. I think, even more than realizing that the TVA might be a team he needs to get on board with, I think he suddenly realized for the first time, I am not in control here. That, and he
Which
also
is hilarious because he's never been.
Right, but I love that the parallels of the details of what else is in the drawer is that it's a drawer full of Infinity Stones and a Honus Wagner baseball card, which is the rarest and most prized baseball card in all of collectorship on Midgard. And so the idea that here's the most valuable collector's item that there can possibly be next to the most valuable collector's items for any galactic being, and they're equally worthless, I thought was just a really cool play.
Agreed.
I've seen criticism of it, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. That why you built an entire 23 film saga around these Infinity Stones and then you take them out of play so quickly. I think Marvel's being smarter than that. I don't think the TVA. I don't want to say the TVA is not real. I think the TVA is a construct that is not going to exist much beyond this series. I think the TVA is not full of good people with righteous intentions. I think if we have a quote unquote good version of Loki, I think that's the variant that is going to usher in these branched realities so that this sacred timeline doesn't work out for whoever it's supposed to work out for. Ultimately, I don't know, but Ravonna Renslayer, Gugu Mbatha-Raw is the actress that plays her. We barely saw her in this show. She is far too good of an actress, far too just commanding on screen. I mean, Owen will, like Mobius even says, like, I feel like I'm always looking up to you. It's appropriate. I like it. Like she's fantastic. If I were betting after episode 1, so everybody take this down so you can throw it in my face in 6 weeks, she is the ultimate villain of the TVA. I think if Kang is in play at all throughout this series, I think it is just like Loki was working for Thanos in the Avengers. I don't think Kang's going to really make his appearance. If he does, it'll be in a post-credit scene. But I am operating under the assumption that Loki is going to be going through many different moral challenges because the TVA is showing themselves to be right, and I don't think they are. Removing free agency is not a good thing. That's what I will say.
I like it.
I like it, man.
Throwing on my face.
I mean,
All right.
we probably could have talked for 45 minutes to an hour just on that aspect alone.
Yeah.
That was.
I think we'll get more chances too. I think it's going to be the premise of this show.
Yeah. Ethan, who is one of our forever a weirdo. This show can easily send you down a rabbit hole easily. How many TVA branches are there? How many Lokis are running around? Is there something that's as powerful or similar to the Infinity Stones within the constructs? Also, how about that round of applause for Loki being a sex fluid person?
So in the poster for the show, they showed Loki's file, and under gender it said fluid. I think there's a reason for that because I do think that this variant of Loki that we're chasing, Sophia DiMartino, is an actress that was doing many fan events on opening night. We have not seen her yet. Heavy speculation. I shared the same speculation that she is playing Lady Loki. I think she is the variant that we're chasing after that we see at the end of the first episode. That's more than likely what's happening. I think we'll get a kid version as well. Shout out to one of my friends, Brett. He said if they're going to give us Kid Loki, it better be 5 from Aiden Gallagher from the Umbrella Academy. He should play Kid Loki. That would make a lot of sense. Rob says it's not Mephisto. Man, I hope not. But yeah, no, it's so great. But Casey and his drawer of paperweights, like I said, ultimately, if the Infinity Stones are rendered useless because this is a construct within a grander plot, then I'm good with it. Well, let's get back to it. We kind of talked a lot about this already, but you've always lived within your set path. Why have I never heard of the TVA before? Well, you never had to hear of us before. To say that what the Avengers did was supposed to happen. Just everything within it, it's justifying their actions to make it work. And that's the entire thing about the sacred timeline. Does anybody else have anything on that topic before we move on?
This was the part that really then just started to melt my mind. And can we talk about the Easter egg right now of
the 616?
Well, could we talk about the Easter egg, or are we going to get into that, or whether or not it's Agent Carter? And do you want to get?
We'll get to that in just a minute.
All right. Well, let's. This was the part that, when coupled with a lot of that stuff, made me really scratch my head and say, I wonder why specific events are sanctioned and others are unforgivable. Him merely grabbing the Tesseract and transporting himself to Mongolia earned him being guilty.
Well, even Miss Minute says whether you started an uprising or you were just late for work. There's a lot of variance in there, no pun intended.
Absolutely. So this was the part that really made me just question and wonder to myself,
are you a robot?
Am I a robot? What would be unforgivable? Because much of the plot of Endgame is not just one person traveling back in time, but an entire team on a time heist. To
change a bunch of bullcrap.
To change the fate of their universe, but then, albeit temporarily, changing the fate of several. I mean, you're led to believe that Cap goes back and puts the time stone almost immediately back in its own universe, so that there isn't a branch or a nexus. But this was the part that really made me think. This was the part that challenged me when I thought about that statement. That this was the part that I went, whoa, this is really deep. But it's whenever you mess with time travel, I will take my hat off to the MCU if they can finally have an episode about time travel that doesn't make half the audience mad and then half the audience chasing how wrong they were and all the plot holes. It's a tough thing to write. Whenever you bring in and introduce time travel, it really messes with people.
Yeah, and I that's what makes me nervous. Like that's what makes me nervous about the multiverse in general is I don't want those X-Men films to count. Like they're not good. Like I don't want them to be in their own timeline. I love my sacred timeline of the MCU. Like it's gonna get muddy, and I'm afraid it's gonna lose. If it loses one person, it's one too many.
I love that's probably why they're doing it.
Yeah, I love how that's your concern too. Is you're like, I don't want those crappy X-Men movies.
The Tobey Maguire movies counting, but I do not want X-Men and Dark Phoenix to count. Like I just don't.
Ghost Rider with Nick Cage? Yeah, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Ben Affleck, Daredevil?
No. Charlie Cox. Yeah, you can introduce Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock and be Peter Parker's lawyer in Spider-Man 3. Like that's how I
could go for hours about Daredevil and Punisher. Yeah, but this is their way of being able to not just, retcon the existence of things beforehand, but I think it's their get out of jail free card for everything going forward, right? Whenever something goes wrong in the comic books, they reboot. But you get another timeline through.
Frustrating. Like I love the interconnectivity of what the MCU has been for 23 films and 3 series now. So
but that doesn't disqualify it, right?
No,
like
it
even if this is the sacred timeline, just to be able to acknowledge that, you know what, there's other stuff that's been out there. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't strive for perfection going forward. It just means that it's okay that there's other things. Like I think DC has done a great job with this. Sorry if I'm crossing the streams here a little bit, but DCEU has actually done a really good job with. Am I getting buzzed? Am I getting pulled back here?
Just a hot take.
Hot take. But the Crisis of Infinite Earths on DC with DC. I don't watch a lot of the DC stuff on the WB, but like
I haven't forgiven them for. Well, it wasn't the WB. It was
CW.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, CW, not WB. I'm dating myself again here. Yeah. But the CW with doing that, with having the multiple Flashes and the multiple Supermen, and then the upcoming Flash movie that's supposed to have Michael Keaton returning as Batman. Like, there's something kind of nice to be able to say, you know what, you don't have to ignore that stuff that you used to love before. That was one of the things that I loved about Spiderverse. Spiderverse was fantastic in terms of just saying, look, anybody can wear the mask. Like, I agree with you. I love the perfection of the craft of the current MCU, but I don't have an issue with acknowledging the existence of other stuff as long as they just kind of say, look, these paths mostly diverge, and every once in a while you get a little bit of something there.
Just admit it, dude. You liked Spider-Verse because it finally gave you Spider-Pig. I know you're a Simpsons fan. It gave you Spider-Pig.
Dude, Spider-Pig. I mean, Spider-Pig is an amazing thing, but yeah, Spider-Ham, he's kind of the jam. Yeah, I'm Peter Porker.
But I think, man, that was a good John Mulaney. I think you can give Spider-Verse a lot of credit here because I think it showed that the audience can keep up with multiple different universes and stuff like that. We are getting a little bit bogged down in the weeds. We're 50 minutes in. We've got just a little bit more of the episode to talk about. I want to talk about this just briefly. We'll start with you, Duane. The God of Mischief is DB Cooper. We knew it was coming because we saw most of it in the trailer. I'm kind of bummed it isn't going to play out as part of the storyline, but it was great.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And then to find out that it was all because he lost the bet to Thor, that whole thing, that whole scene was fun. His look, and then jumping out of the plane going back up into the sky. Loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, Heimdall was a good shot with the Bifrost.
Yeah.
What else we learned?
Nobody does it better.
Heimdall had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Heimdall just did everything Thor wanted him to do.
Listen, how angry do you think Odin was by that? He had to be pissed off at them.
Sensed.
Yeah. He had to be.
Found out.
I could just see him on the other side of the Bifrost, standing there with his arms crossed, but like, what is this right now?
I think it's great. It shows a fun relationship between brothers, because brothers will do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So,
anytime I think of the Bifrost, I just always imagine Scourge being on the other end with the shake weight.
Well, that's my thing. Is like Odin couldn't have been that upset, considering it wasn't Scourge on the other side going, "Behold my stuff." Like
Texas.
Oh my goodness! All right, man. Let's keep it moving.
All right, your purpose. We talked about this already, so let's actually jump right ahead. So we talked about it a little bit ago. Loki escapes, and we just want to reference this real quick. If you're watching us on YouTube or on the replay, you can see a video here in the bottom corner of when Loki escapes. Somebody else comes back through the time door or whatever we call that thing. And the TARDIS or whatever we're going to call it. She looks very, very similar to Peggy Carter. Like extremely similar, cannot be an accident. I don't think it's going to lead anywhere, but was she looking for Steve somewhere within this timeline at some point? It has to be her. Like, doesn't it?
Yes.
Listen, it's pretty close.
It's her.
Anything's possible in the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah. It's a cool Easter egg. I don't think that it's going to play out. You have 6 episodes. How do you go down that rabbit hole? And
no, not in this show.
Not in this show.
Not without Agent Carter season 3.
I think it could play a role in What If somehow.
That's a good call.
Yeah, I mean that works.
That's a spot on call.
Yep.
But while we're talking about Easter eggs, again, we think that's just an Easter egg, but kind of a cool one. This one as well. You can see a young Stan Lee with a medal around his neck on the painting in the TVA. It is always good to have Stan Lee in the MCU. And we're going to talk about one final Easter egg. And we see 2012 Loki learns about his own sacred timeline. When the tape runs out and it comes to an end, does anybody know the Easter egg here?
The Loki 616.
Loki 616. So the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also it is 616 is the spot where the van is the storage unit where the van is stored in Endgame that Scott comes out of the quantum realm. But Marvel 616 universe is what we would call the main timeline in the comic books. So Loki 616, the sacred timeline being referred to as Loki 616 is just a really cool Easter egg. But 2012 Loki, and this in 3 minutes, we get facial expressions that take us on a 6-year journey of Loki really craving that relationship with his brother and just the sorrow of the death of his mom, actually caring that Odin died, getting that speech that Thor gives Loki about how he looked up to him right before the get help scene, and then ultimately coming to his demise at the hands of the man he was working for less than 12 hours earlier. Mark Valentine, you said this was the greatest spot of the episode for you.
This was the best part of the episode. This scene brought me back to my childhood. There's a film in 1991 stars Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep. It's called Defending Your Life. The whole premise of the movie is Albert Brooks dies, and then there's a place that you go either before you're either sent to heaven or you go back to Earth to try again. And there's only one thing that you have to justify is that you were able to overcome your life and the fear in your life. And this scene really brought me back to that movie, because a big part of the movie with Albert Brooks was watching yourself almost like you were in a film, having those emotions again, being separated from your earthly body. And it was very much like that out of body experience. I wonder if that film inspired this in some way, shape, or form, because the concept was almost taken directly from that 1991 film of a person watching themselves, having to almost adjudicate or atone or explain what had happened there, or, their motivation. And to me, it was a really great moment for Loki to realize some of the decisions that he made while in that body. He didn't fully understand the repercussions. His mother was probably the biggest moment. Here he thinks, as always, you know what, I didn't intend for this, but I wanted to send them up to kill Thor. And then all of these decisions have consequences that I could never see that far. And he regrets the fact that his mother,
what he does, it was going to happen anyway.
That what he does kills his mother. And I think, again, coupled with some of the other events, it really is a learning moment for him. But then it was also beautiful that he had a chance to see his father say, "I love you," and it wasn't forced. That it was at the end of his father's life. That the last thing that his father said to both of them was how much he loved his sons. And then to get that validation that he wanted from his brother, it was, I think, the three things that he has always wanted to hear, and him getting them in quick succession, I think left a big mark on him.
When we talk about Loki, when we talk about Loki in the Avengers, this particular character, Thor was pleading to him of, you can stop this, you should stop this. And Loki genuinely considers stopping that. And it's this moment in time when he gets the courage to at least admit what he accused the TVA of being earlier is an illusion, a cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear. And then Owen Wilson finished this is the sentence of a desperate play for control. That goes right back into, do you enjoy hurting people? You're a liberator of eyeballs, maybe. And it's Loki loving that fear that he's conjuring at that moment in time. But Loki sees himself as weak. And this is what's giving him the courage to finally admit it, the introspection that happens within that. And how good are those scenes with Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston? Just
so good.
So much emotion and humor. Like when Loki stands up to, I was standing up to prove a point, and oh, well, then you can do it. Well, now it wouldn't be as meaningful. It's hilarious, but it doesn't undercut the scene whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Owen Wilson fits in this episode so perfectly. I'm just so excited. Duane, what did you think of 2012 Loki kind of making that jump all the way to 2018?
Yeah, actually, just exactly like Marc said, that whole, and actually all of those scenes that we're talking about there with just the two of them, kind of just gave you so much of a look into, what he was feeling at that moment, because, he hadn't lived any of that yet. So he's like, well, this didn't happen. Oh yeah, it's going to.
Yeah, not yet.
But it's going to. This is what's going to happen, and it's because of what you did. So again, it's that moment where you realize that the consequences of your actions, but then you also get the validation. So it's just this huge range of emotions. Meanwhile, Mobius is kind of poking at him the whole time, which I thought was kind of interesting. He kept needling at him, kept poking at him. Well, why do you do this? What's your reason? And he just goes at him. And the chemistry between the two of them, the arc of how, Loki goes from one end to the other. I'll be interested to see, now that he kind of has had all that information. He knows he can't be reset, quote unquote, or go back. He knows that.
He knows too much. Yeah.
Yeah, he knows too much to go back. So now, so that he has something to do. Hey, I've got something you can do. I'm interested to see that, you can actually help us find who we're looking for. Well, who are you looking for? And of course, the reveal.
And think about, he knows too much, but he also can't go back because it's gone. Like that timeline is
it's not there.
And juxtapose like Loki seeing his end and seeing what his life ultimately turned into, dying at the hands of Thanos, versus what Thanos did in Avengers Endgame of saying that's destiny fulfilled. Like that's somebody who lived up to what they saw as their greater purpose their glorious purpose, if we want to put that in Loki terms. But Loki, he's afraid of how he dies. Ruby, go ahead.
No, I think that the economy of storytelling is brilliant. I love that, just in having him see his whole life and he gets caught up in that moment, and that you see him take the emotional journey. Like, how it's incredible to comprehend that somehow they've taken several films worth of material and somehow had Loki take that journey in 90 seconds of watching the greatest hits.
Yeah.
And yet he's still able to have that whole emotional journey, so that as he goes forward in the MCU and we watch him through the rest of this, he's now caught up to us. It doesn't matter that he didn't actually live it. He's caught up. I think that's really exciting. And I think it'll be then neat to see, like, once he kind of figures things out, where does he find his place back into the sacred timeline? If he's been, in the words of Dr. Emmett Brown, if he's been erased from existence, how does he find a way back in and understand his place? And is he any different now that he truly, he's been somehow psychoanalyzed by a timeless being? What happens after Freud has gotten into the head of Loki?
Yep. It's. I thought we were going on the journey of season 1 of redeeming him in the eyes of the audience, and we've already caught up to 2018 Loki.
And that was such a great decision on the part of the writers.
Like, it's so good.
Yeah. What a great decision on the part of the writers to not have to rework him. Like Mike said, it's just so economical to have that entire story arc be done in the span of 90 seconds.
Yep.
And he can't be redeemed. I think if they tried to redeem him in any way, it would be not true to his character either. Like, he's still the trickster. It was like the second that Mobius grabs his hand to help him off the floor, it's like he's picking his pocket. Like, you knew before he even got it, be like, what's he grabbing? And everything he does is going to inherently be a trick.
Yeah.
We also didn't call out the Easter egg of when Loki says, "I'll have that drink now," and Mobius offers him Josta soda, which is something made from PepsiCo back in like the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's
energy drink.
Yeah, just has sitting around. Yeah, the energy drink.
Was it Josta? It looked like Jolt.
No, it was Josta.
Okay.
It was Josta. He had a can waiting there for Loki. But last thing we're going to touch on is the variant we're hunting is you. We go to 1858 in Salina, Oklahoma. There is some piece of technology from the 3rd millennium. They think that it was somebody just fiddling with a time machine, left the oil behind. They stand in said oil and it burns them alive. I am under the impression that we know that this is the variant of Loki. I expect this to be Sophia DiMartino, Lady Loki. I don't think we're going to see a Vision versus Vision, Paul Bettany versus Paul Bettany kind of deal. I think we're only going to see Tom Hiddleston meet up against other versions of Loki, and I don't think we're going to see Tom Hiddleston, Lindsay Lohan, Parent Trap style.
Right. Playing both parts, yeah.
But I'm in there thinking this variant is actually as good as they come when it comes to being Loki. I think the TVA is dirty. That's the side of the camp that I'm currently living on. Ruby, I'll give you some of your moment for your last thoughts.
I'm excited to see how this plays out. On if the other was if Endgame was the time heist, then I'm excited to see what happens when we get into the time war, the time detectives as they try and crack this thing down. And I love the idea of who better to hunt a criminal than themselves. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see. And I'm since the TVA clearly doesn't have any morals, I think it's going to be really fun to see Loki having his own kind of moral tests as he has to kind of wager, who am I? What am I? Am I really different from multiverse, from universe to universe? And, what side am I on? Am I on my own side? Am I literally on my own side because I'm backing up all of my alternate versions? Or am I going to choose a whole different path? I think it's going to be a really cool cluster to find its way through.
Dwayne, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I can't wait to see how that works. I also am really interested in the fact that, we see that at the end of the episode, what we think again is Lady Loki, she gets one of those time reset,
7th one.
Yeah. So that she has that. So what timeline is she going to reset, quote unquote, and change what is either the sacred timeline or to a timeline that suits her reality, so I'm interested in seeing that. As you guys know, I love Marvel. And I'm just excited about Loki as a character. To me, he's fun. He's a trickster. He's got lots of layers, which makes him really fun to watch and diagnose and see on TV or film. And so to me, I thought the first episode was amazing. I thought they covered, like you guys said earlier, a lot of ground in one episode to get us to a place where we can really grow and have a story. So it's exciting to me.
I'm going to turn off my speculation brain here in just a minute, but we know that that's the 7th time resetter that she or he obtained throughout the episode, depending on the dialogue. I don't think they're collecting them to use them. I think they're collecting them so nobody can use them. And
Okay.
I would agree with that. Yep.
I like it.
I was
ahead,
going to say, thank you for saying that. I was just going to say, I think we're assuming that they're being collected to end the chaos. I think that they're being collected to allow the chaos to ensue. That she wants, she wants there to be chaos. That there's more damage done when there is a war amongst all of these timelines than the alternate, which is clipping the branches. That's
I like it
in here. Yeah,
it's great. We've got Wednesday drops, which means we only have about another, about 36 hours to go before our next episode. Gentlemen, thank you so much for that fun one. Ruby, Mark, Valentine, and myself, we did drop Babu's frickin' podcast talking about the greatest lightsaber duels in the Star Wars galaxy. That is out everywhere you can find your podcast. That is available now.
it's out.
Perfect.
Hey.
This Diz Live was on right before us. You can check the replay of that. What's going on in this Diz Life world?
We have an episode that's called The New Normal. Duane and I hate that term, but we accepted it nonetheless. That we're talking about the things that will be staying at Disney World post-COVID, even after the phased reopening, things that you can, as a guest, expect to be seeing for at least the near future, and things that are quickly fading away. A lot of fun, very informative episode.
And in United We Fan, we recorded an epic Indiana Jones epic podcast spectacular. It's a 2-part Indiana Jones episode. The first episode is going to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark, Disney Parks, and Temple of Doom. And then next week we will post the rest of comic books, video games. The third one was Sean Connery. Somebody help me. And then
The Last Crusade.
And then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, as well as what we expect from the 5th movie. It was a fun one to record. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And to update one last thing, we're going to update every single week. The WoW count from Owen Wilson still stands at 0.
Wow.
Gentlemen, for all time.
Always.
Always.